Do you have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
Well, hello there once again, and welcome to Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. John Scholes, your host, and joining us momentarily will be my pal, employment lawyer Lior Samfiru from EmploymentLawyer.ca. I'm going to tell you right off the top how to get a hold of Lior. Always encouraged to call him and his team and have that discussion for any matters that come to mind, right? 1-888-861-4555. Ask at EmploymentLawyer.ca is a good way to reach on email. There's also a website called PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca. I know Lior will make reference to that during the show today in just a little bit, but over the next 30 minutes, lots to get through, so we'll get into it. All you need to know about termination for cause, that will be the main topic on the show today. We'll also get to some phone calls from our live radio show that Lior and I have been doing for 10 years across this wonderful country of ours. That's coming up in just a bit. I'll tell you how you can join in on those shows and maybe get your call on the air sometime on this show in the future, right? But we always start off with the week that was. Lior, pal, what's cooking on your side, my friend?
Hey, John, great to be here and to be back to talk about employment law and to try to now resolve as many workplace issues as possible. You may not know what to do if you're facing a workplace dilemma, an ultimatum, a threat, a loss of a job. Well, I know what to do, and I'll tell you on the show what you need to know, how to react and how to respond, and of course, what the law does for you. Because guess what? In this province, frankly, across Canada, we have some really good and comprehensive employment laws. Unfortunately, not too many people know what they are. Well, by watching the show, you will know what they are. You will know what to do. So if you have a workplace issue, this is the time to listen. And of course, throughout the show, if you want to connect with me and take that next step to actually get to work and resolve that issue, we'll give you that contact information throughout the show. But let's start. Let me tell you about a situation that came across my desk just over the past few days. I spoke with a gentleman that was called into the office kind of first day of the week and was told, well, today actually was going to be your last day. Things are now working out, so we're going to let you go effective today. Now, he had worked for this employer for about 6 months. And when they let him go, they offered him 3 weeks severance. He called me and he wanted to know if it's appropriate. Now, if he truly really only was a 6-month employee, even then that 3-week offer was completely inadequate. In fact, even after 6 months, he was probably owed about 4 months of severance, not 3 weeks, 4 months. So right off the bat, that's an issue. But this is where the story got even more interesting. So yeah, he'd worked for the company for 6 months, but he was recruited away. He was convinced to leave another job that he had for 15 years. He was approached by the company through LinkedIn. He wasn't looking to leave. They convinced him ultimately to be considered for the job. They made him all these promises about his future compensation, about his future role, eventually convinced him to leave and join the company. Things didn't work out, and after 6 months, they let him go. Well, why is that important? It's important because when you're recruited from a job and then are let go shortly thereafter, you're owed enhanced severance that recognizes your time with the previous company. So even though he only worked for the company for 6 months, because he was recruited away from a company where he had been for 15 years, he's now going to get enhanced severance. He's looking at somewhere north of a year's severance, even though he only worked for a company for 6 months. So it's an important message and a reminder for everyone that may have been recruited. But just beyond that, there are many reasons as to why you may be owed a lot more than you realize if you lose your job. This is just one example. There's many other examples like that. That's why it's so important, so imperative. If you lose your job, whether you worked for a day or 50 years, you have to call, you have to get legal advice. You'll be surprised just by how much you're owed.
And as I mentioned off the top, anytime, 1-888-861-4555 to get a hold of Lior and his crew. Ask at EmploymentLawyer.ca. I also mentioned our radio show. It's been about a decade, and about a month from now, it'll be a decade we've been doing radio across the country, Lior, including Sundays at 1 p.m. on News Talk 1010. You'll catch our show. We get some great calls on this show every week. We like to play them back here and talk about them. It's always a learning experience. So we'll get to our first radio show call on this show right now.
I've worked for one company for the last 8 years. I'm management. I'm going to turn 55 next month. My boss essentially has come up and said, I can't afford you, and you go on Pogie. We still have to review and talk, but my question is, I'm assuming that he just wants to lay me off and, forget about any kind of notice or severance or whatever.
Well, that may be the case. The employer may want to forget about notice or severance, but guess what? Guess who doesn't forget about that? The law, right? There's legal obligations that have to be complied with. So no, he cannot be let go or even put on a temporary layoff. Reminder, by the way, that temporary layoffs often and usually give the right to the employee to treat that layoff as a termination and therefore get severance. So whether the company is struggling financially or not, it still has the legal obligation to pay severance. There's no way around that. There's no mechanism to avoid that. So the question then, of course, becomes, for this person after his 8 years of service, how much severance is he owed? Well, I'm going to take you, as I usually do on the show, to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. We're going to use our severance calculator at pocketemploymentlawyer.ca, and let's see how much he's owed. Let's see the amount of real severance. So we know he's a manager, he's been there for 8 years, 55 years of age. Company says, no, we'd like to avoid paying severance. No severance for you. Well, you see right on the screen there that he's actually owed as much as 14 months of severance. 14 months. Okay, that's a significant amount. That's what he's owed. And that's why, by the way, you at home, if you lose your job, if you're put on a temporary layoff, if the company's threatening you, you have to go to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca.
And just so you know, that website, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca, that Lior just mentioned, rolled into that is that severance calculator. Over 2 million Canadians have used that and had their eyes opened up for sure. Everything you need to know about termination for cause, that's coming up after a short break. In the meantime, that number again, 1-888-861-4555 and ask@employmentlawyer.ca. We'll continue with more Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. Hang on.
You have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
All right, welcome back to Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. John Scholes with me, of course, Lior Samfiru, employment lawyer from EmploymentLawyer.ca. That's the website you want to go to anytime for more contact information. But the phone number, toll free, of course, 1-888-861-4555. Ask@EmploymentLawyer.ca. But Lior, our main topic for the day, termination for cause, everything you need to know. First question, I'll lob an easy one over the plate for you, pal. What does it mean to be fired or dismissed for cause? Break that down for me.
So a termination for cause, the best way to look at that, it's the capital punishment. It's the worst penalty that an employer can impose on an employee. And because of that, it's a situation that's reserved for the worst offenders. So termination for cause that happens when the employee did something so bad, so awful, that it's just impossible to continue employing them. Okay, it's impossible to continue employing them, and the employer says, that's it, it's done. This relationship is broken down. We can let you go, and because you've done something so bad, we don't have to pay you severance. By the way, I want you to remember that a lot of times employers jump the gun, and they try to do that prematurely. They say they have cause when they really, really don't. It's difficult to establish cause, but remember, it's reserved for the worst offenders only.
That's a good point you made off the top. How hard is it to establish cause, and does the length of your employment play a part in that entire thing?
It is difficult to terminate employment for cause always, whether you work for a day or many, many years, because you really have to show that the employee did something so bad that that's it. This relationship is done. It's destroyed. It's that much more difficult, frankly, to terminate for cause if you're already a long service employee. If you've been there for many years, it's assumed you're doing something right. So all of a sudden, for you to be so bad that you can be terminated for cause, man, that employer is going to really have to show something awful happen here. So that's why I said, oftentimes I see employers say, hey, you did something wrong, employee. We're letting you go for cause. Well, not so fast. just because the employee did something wrong, it absolutely does not mean that there's cause to let them go. It does not mean that the employer can deprive them of severance. That's what we call a wrongful dismissal. So if your employer saying you've been terminated for cause, yeah, probably not, unless what you did is really, really bad.
You know, you said some things, so how many chances should an employee get? Or I guess I could ask you, how many chances should an employer give to an employee before they can terminate for cause?
So listen, if you did something awful, like, I don't know, you stole, you committed fraud, you committed violence, chances, forget about chances, right? One incident would be enough to terminate for cause. But listen, let's face it, most situations are not like that. If you've done something wrong, maybe you were late, maybe your job wasn't up to par, your employer is expected to do things before they terminate you for cause, to give you warnings, to give you an opportunity to improve, to maybe even, in some situation, maybe even impose a suspension. Usually, before we see a termination for cause, we'd like to see about 3 other disciplinary measures. Now, that's not a hard and fast rule. Sometimes you need more than that, sometimes you need less. But kind of as a general guideline, 3 things before the employer can be in a position to consider a termination for cause. Now, what I see often is employers now wanting to work that hard and build that case and to kind of go from 0 to a cause right away, and that you just can't do.
Does severance play a part in this at all, or even employment insurance, EI? Can you get those if you've been fired for cause? Is there situations?
So if the company truly has cause, if they can show that you did something bad, that they give you all these opportunities and you're just not doing it, and they really do have cause, then no, they don't have to pay severance. And that would also usually disqualify you from EI. But remember what I said, in most cases, the company jumps the gun and they try to terminate for cause when they don't reach that level. Means they have to pay severance, means you should be getting EI. So that's why it's so important to understand how difficult it is for cause. Oftentimes employers equate doing something wrong with cause. It's simply not the same thing.
So if you have an employee that has just been fired for cause and they slide over some paperwork and say, you got to sign this right now, what do you do other than panic?
So here's what I often see. I see employers say, well, we have cause, we don't have to pay you anything, but we're going to be nice. We're going to offer you, a few dollars to sign. Don't, okay? Unless what you did is awful and you know it's awful, sure, may as well sign. But unless it's that, you're still going to be owed your full severance. That severance can be as much as 24 months. So don't worry about what they want you to do. Don't worry about that deadline. Your legal rights don't expire when your employer imposes that deadline. Let's talk, give me a call, let's make sure you get what you're owed. Once you sign that piece of paper, you really can't go back. So be smart about it. Don't sign without speaking to me.
Again, a reminder, EmploymentLawyer.ca, the website you want to go to for more information, contact, how to reach out to Lior and his team, and also find a radio station near you across this country that carries our long-running radio show, including Sundays, 1 o'clock, News Talk 1010. You will catch Lior and I doing our thing for an hour. Our phone call, second phone call from one of our radio shows is coming up right now.
I'm currently on a disability leave, and the employer is asking for an independent medical examination. How many independent medical examinations they might be entitled to, in the case of the context of disability, of course?
Well, your employer is actually not entitled at all to demand independent medical examinations, okay? Your employer has to abide by what your doctor says. So they don't get to question your doctor. Your employer doesn't get to say, well, we don't really think your doctor knows what he or she is talking about, so we're going to go get you an independent medical exam. No, they don't have a right to do that. You can absolutely say no. If they need clarification from your doctor, they can ask and your doctor can clarify. But no, there's no right to an independent medical exam. That said, if it's an insurance company, a disability insurance company, they may have a right to demand an independent medical exam before they pay you benefits, but not your employer. They can't force you, and you should say no. They should rely on your doctor, and that's it.
Okay, coming up just ahead here, why a 26-year employee should say no to 8 weeks of severance. That is on the way, and the difference between a dependent and independent contractor. That is all coming up. A short break, though. In the meantime, that number again to reach out to Lior and the crew, 1-888-861-4555. Email is ask@employmentlawyer.ca. We'll continue. This is Ask a Lawyer on CP24.
You have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
All right, welcome back. This is Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. I'm John Scholes, and with me again, employment lawyer Lior Samfiru from EmploymentLawyer.ca. Easy to get a hold of Lior and his team. They always encourage you to call, have that conversation, 1-888-861-4555. Email ask@EmploymentLawyer.ca and just EmploymentLawyer.ca, the website we always direct you to for many things having to do with your employment rights, and also the link to you and many radio shows across the country. Over the last 10 years, Lior and I have been doing, there's tons of phone calls, lots to be learned from those shows. Again, EmploymentLawyer.ca, and right here as well, News Talk 1010, Sundays at 1 p.m. Lior, let's get to phone call number 3 from our radio shows.
My wife was given her termination papers last week, and she'd been working for 26 years for this very successful orthodontic practice. She's just the nicest person in the world and has no idea of how to attack this problem. So she was offered 8 weeks. That was it. She was devastated. She's broken up. The problem is she just doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, and after 26 years, what a shock, all of a sudden you're terminated. Now let's, first I'll break it down this way. There's nothing that can be done about the actual termination. An employer can let you go even after 26 years, shocking and unfair as it is. It comes down, though, to severance. And 8 weeks is not even close. Now, this may be an employer that is under the misapprehension that the size of the company is relevant to severance. Well, no, the size of the company does have no effect on the full severance that you're owed and your full entitlements. Whether you work for a company with 2 employees or 2,000 employees, your severance ultimately is going to be the same. And this person, after 26 years, is going to be owed a lot more than 8 weeks. So let's use our severance calculator tool again. Let's go to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca, use that severance calculator tool, and let's see how much she's really owed, because guess what? It's not 8 weeks. So she's in a clerical role. She's been there for 26 years, 61 years of age, offered 8 weeks. That's ridiculous. You see that she's owed anywhere from 18 to 24 months of severance. At her salary level, that's somewhere north of $100,000. That is what she's owed. That is what the law provides. Same with you at home. Small company, large company, young or old, or length of service, doesn't matter, whatever it is. Use our severance calculator at pocketemploymentlawyer.ca.
Okay, if you haven't figured this out already, Lior, busy guy, and including running a law firm coast to coast, also does radio shows 7 days a week, this TV show, and also live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. You want to be part of that, stlawyers.ca. Again, stlawyers.ca. Want to get to a question from the live stream you had recently, or it goes like this. The company has called me an independent contractor for 15 years, but I'm pretty sure that I'm at least a dependent contractor. When I brought this up, they cut my commission in half. How should I respond?
So we have independent contractors and we have employees, but there's a category in between them called a dependent contractor. A dependent contractor is someone that's not an employee, but they're financially dependent on the company that they work for. They do most of their work with one company. So the law says, well, wait a second. If you're going to do most of your work with that company, even though you're not an employee, is a dependent contractor, they still have obligations to you, especially when it comes to termination. They have to pay you severance as if you are an employee. So in this situation, if their commissions are cut, that's a breach of contract. That is something that's going to entitle the person to severance, okay? So you may be a contractor and still be owed severance. It's very common for individuals to be misclassified as independent contractors when they really are employees or they're dependent contractor, and your employer can never make significant changes to the terms of your employment. They can't reduce your commission. They can't just decide to pay you less, and if they do that, that's a constructive dismissal.
Lior, so much still to get through. In fact, I want to go to a question that landed on your desk recently, but I got to take a break first. So in the meantime, write this down. Keep it. The contact information to get a hold of Lior anytime. Phone numbers first, 1-888-861-4555, and then email ask@employmentlawyer.ca, and just employmentlawyer.ca would be the website as well. We'll continue. More Ask a Lawyers coming right up. Stay here, CP24.
You have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
Welcome back to Ask a Lawyer. As mentioned, Leo, a short time ago, I want to get to a question, interesting one that landed on your desk recently, and it's not a rare occurrence. It's not a rare question. That's why I want to get to it. It's really important. It goes like this. It says, I was just fired after 5 years for very vague performance issues, despite the fact my team outperformed in the last quarter. I think this is related to a discrimination issue I raised about a manager. What should I do?
Well, certainly, if you're let go for performance reasons, and clearly the performance is good because the team outperformed, that means that there's other reasons going on. That's not performance, it's something else. And it does start to look, if she complains about discrimination and then is let go for a false reason, it makes it certainly look like she's being let go because she complained about discrimination. That's illegal. You cannot be let go because you've been discriminated against. You cannot be let go because you've been complaining about discrimination. So right off the bat, we may have a human rights violation. But even if we didn't, even if there was not a human rights violation or workplace harassment and there's performance issues, she still is going to be owed severance, this person. You can't be let go for performance reasons without severance unless you're almost deliberately trying to do a bad job. That's not the case here. So severance, John, is still going to be owed and potentially much more.
Always lots to discuss on the show, Lior, but once again, we are out of time. We'll save some for next week. In the meantime, you want to catch Lior and me on radio every week right here in the GTA. That would be News Talk 1010, Sundays at 1 p.m. Of course, this show, Ask a Lawyer on CP24, Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. All the details can be found at askalawyer and cp24.com/askalawyer. Phone number, 1-888-861-4555 and ask@employmentlawyer.ca. That's the email address you always use. More information, simply go to EmploymentLawyer.ca. Next week, mistakes that employers make because they simply don't know any better. That's coming up next week here on Ask a Lawyer. Thank you so much for tuning in.